Hello and welcome back to the Tin Barn. I'm Pragmatic Lee, and in today's video we're going to do an unboxing and talk about some first impressions and look at this first tool that I bought in the year 2020. This is the Forney Easy Weld. This comes from Amazon. This is the 140 Flux Core FCI. So let's open it up and see what we got in the box. And as so often is the case, it's a box within a box. Forney Easy Weld 140 FCI Flux Core Inverter Welder, 120 volt. Seems to be packaged very well. Let's see what all we got. There's some instructions, warranty, so forth. All right, here's our electrode in. As I say, it seems to be packaged very well. Has the guard, and of course the tip. This one is for the tip that it come with, and I think the little bit of wire is a .030 wire. And as is the case on about all these inexpensive flux core welders and even MIG welders, if anyone seems to have any complaint about them, it deals with this part right here, and that's the ground clamp. It is kind of flimsy, not flimsy, but it's kind of lightweight in compared to my Lincoln BuzzBox welder, but I think it will be plenty sufficient for my use here. Now I think it said it came with a sample of wire, but I sure don't see any. It does come with an extra tip. I will check the documentation again. I'm pretty sure it said it came with a some starter wire, but I sure don't see any in the box. I did buy a roll. This is 2-pound roll of wire, so I'm going to look at getting that installed, read a little bit on the instructions of getting the wire installed. And I've never used a flux core welder before. Well, matter of fact, I've never used a wire welder of any type before. All I've ever used is that Lincoln stick welder. So this is going to take a little bit of experimenting on my part, but I'm going to look at how to get the wire installed. Maybe take a couple of test passes, and then we'll come back and look at some, talk about some first impressions and maybe ease or difficulty of operation. All right, I went back and looked at the ad, and the ad does not say anything about including any wire. So I'm glad I did pick up a roll. Like I say, this is a 2-pound roll. And at the same time I picked it up, I picked up a pair of welding pliers as well. I'd suggest that. I've already seen the need. If you don't, you're going to need at least, at a minimum, a pair of needle nose pliers. But on the inside of the cover here, side cover, it gives, in plain English, various size material. I'm not going to try to focus in enough or zoom in enough so that you can read that, because I'm sure the camera will lose focus. But it's 22 gauge, 16 gauge, 1/8, 3/16, and 1/4. And for each of those, it gives a voltage to use and a feed rate for the wire. Those two are adjusted on the front. On the left, you have the voltage adjustment, and on the right, the wire feed, the speed of the wire feed. And speaking of the wire feed, some of what I'm about to say is probably first nature to any of you that are used to wire welding. As I said, this is my first experience with it. And the only thing the quick start sheet or the instruction sheet says is set the roll face the side marked 30 thousandths away from the machine. Well, I'm not really sure what that means, unless it's saying put the label to the out. I think it would be clear if they just simply said, or showed a diagram with it feeding off the top, which I'm pretty sure is the direction it needs to go. Common sense would say the wire would come down and go through here. To load the wire, this has two washers with a spring in between and a wing nut, and has this large spool. This large spool is for the 8-inch large spools of wire. I'm using this small one, so it goes directly on the spindle, gets a washer. These are keyed washers, by the way. Spring, the other washer, and the wing nut. Now, another thing that's a little bit disappointing about the instruction sheet, it doesn't say anything about how much tension to put on that spring. And as I say, this might be first nature to those of you that are familiar with wire welding, but I'm going to experiment first and just see backlash or whatever. Power cord comes with a, I think this is called a 25 amp plug. Suggested being on a 30 amp circuit, but they do give you an adapter for regular household type receptacles. I think probably what I'll do, I've got in my panel box over here, I've got space for one more breaker. I think I will put a 30 amp breaker in and put this style plug, but for today we're going to stick with just the common household. So I'm going to plug that in, and the wire feed, I'm going to see if I can zoom down just a little bit more, because hopefully this will be a help to someone else that's new to this, because there's really no instructions, well, the instructions really don't show you very much about loading the wire in the first time. As I say, I do have it coming off the top. I'll come around, come in right here. There's two rollers right here. These are knurled rollers, and there's looks like a little blue lead in, and then 8 feet of the electrode. But it does say, or what it says in the instructions, is to remove the consumables. So, assuming that's the wire tip and the guard. So I'll set these off to the side. We'll see if I can get this wire started in now. You're watching first time, you'll learn with me. All right, I can see the wire coming up to the knurled rollers. So I'm going on the switch on the back, I'm going to turn it on. I'm going to hold that up to them rollers. And this is where those pliers come in good. Well, it's got a, appears to have a bend right here at the end and doesn't want to get in that groove in the rollers. There we go. Now I'm going to pull the trigger on the electrode, and when I do, I see those rollers start turning. It may have too much tension over here because I don't want to pick it up. Alright, finally picked it up. When it did, it grabbed it pretty quick. Now if you can see, I need to get it lined up with that little blue light right there. Alright, that is feeding in now. And I'm going to turn the wire feed on up pretty high because this has got, it says 8 foot of electrode cable. The reason I'm stopping this along is just to be sure I don't have any backlash here. All right, my wire has come out the tip now. So I'll get the welding tip, or the 30 thousandths tip, screw back in. Give that just snug it. Alright, so now we've got the wire loaded. I'm going to read a little bit more of the manual. I'm reading some, coming back, videoing what I've learned, and we'll keep that process until we're ready to actually do some welding. Okay, I think I spoke a little bit too quick when I was a little bit critical of the instructions and said it didn't show much on loading the wire. The quick start guide did not, but I just sat down with the manual, with the thick manual that comes with it. Of course, it's in numerous different languages, but I sat down with that, and it does show the wire coming off the top, and it shows that once the wire stops feeding, that this should not be taut. It shouldn't be tight, as would be the case if you had the tension too tight on this. It's basically should have some little bit of freedom in there, but it shouldn't be so loose that when it stops feeding that this backlashes. So I'm ready, I think, now to strike an arc. So we're going to close this down. This does give a guide up here for the various thicknesses of material and what to set the voltage and the wire feed speed at. So let's set this back out of the way just a little bit. Alright, for now I'm going to just put the ground clamp in a spot where I know is a good clean surface. And I've got a couple pieces of 1/8 inch material right here. And this would be an ideal place for welder's third hand, which I haven't taken the time to build yet, but that's going to be an upcoming project real quick. So let's just see if we can get a little. Let me grab something else to hold that. Alright folks, for better or worse, I'm fixing to strike my first ever arc with a wire welder. I've got two pieces of 1/8 inch thick material. The guide on the welder says set the voltage at 7 volts and the wire feed at 7. So that's what I've got. Let's give it a shot. Well folks, I'm going to be brutally honest with you. That very first weld didn't do too well. As you can see what happened here, I had the wire turned a little up and all my burn in is on this top piece. I wasn't getting anything in the joint at all. And I needed a bit more volts on this as well. But I kept experimenting, and other than having to stop and start, as in right here, I got to where I was getting some pretty good welds. Now keep in mind, with a flux core welder, you get a lot of smoke, and you get a lot of spatter, and of course you get some flux over it. I kept experimenting though. This was the second attempt down in here, trying to get the electrode and wire pointed in the right direction. Done a little weld more in there. Turned my heat up a little bit and began to get a really good weld. I say turn my heat up, turn the voltage up a little bit and the wire feed. Someone commented on a previous video that the secret to these flux core wire welders, or any kind of wire welder, is getting your wire speed, determining what it needs to be and getting it set to that. Getting real good penetration though, and not getting burnt out at the edge. It's good flowing in. Again, a lot of spatter involved, but getting good welds, good penetrations. Nothing pretty at all about these welds, but they're definitely penetrating the metal, and I feel certain the more I use this, the better I'm going to get at it. So overall, I'm extremely pleased with this choice of welder. I had several to choose from. There's a popular one available now that's 120 amp. It's about $25 cheaper than this 140 from Amazon. One of the things I did like about the Forney welders is that the manual comes with contact information, email, web address, for tech support if needed. The manual is pretty good. After I took time to go back and look at the manual instead of the quick start guide, I was really pleased with the content of it. So as I said when showing the welds, they're not the prettiest at all. Got a lot to learn with controlling the wire speed and steadying my hand as I'm welding. But I think this is going to be a good product and a good addition to the 10 barn. I appreciate your attention. Hope you enjoyed the video, and we'll see you on the next one.